Hey, what's up, everybody? Steven here. Going to do a quick rankings video of my top 10 edge rushers this incoming draft. And this is something that I'm pretty excited about. I think this edge rusher class, it certainly is lacking a, Chase Young, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa type of prospect. But I think there are a lot of quality edge rushers in this draft class who can come in and develop into some quality players. I think really, they have some of everything. There's some good 3-4 outside linebackers. There's some good traditional 4-3 defensive ends, and there are some good, 3-4 defensive ends, which we're going to get into as well. All kind of falling under this umbrella of the edge rusher position. And it's a group that I'm really excited about. Before I get started, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Manscaped. As always, we have a great working relationship with them, and it's a company that really makes all of us dudes feel our best in the coming months of summer. It gets hot, and the last thing you want to do is feel uncomfortable with what's going on downstairs. And so I think Manscaped does a great job of providing products to make sure that we are feeling our best. All right, that being said, I'm going to start with number one here, because I think this is one of the most interesting debates of draft season. I've gone back and forth on it a bunch of times between Azeez Ojulari, the edge rusher. Excuse my dog right there for a second. I've gone back and forth a few times with Azeez Ojulari from Georgia and Jalen Phillips from Miami. They're very, very close, but I'm going to go with Azeez Ojulari from Georgia as my number one edge rusher. I think the biggest knock on him, that's something that I've seen some kind of analysts say, is that he's a little undersized. And well, he might be a little undersized, but I think his play strength is outstanding. There's this play against Alabama where he's lined up on the right side of the offensive line. Deontay Brown pulls over to the left, and Azeez Ojulari stonewalled him. And I think he does that quite often. If you watch his games against Florida and against Alabama, with two really experienced left tackles, and Azeez Ojulari gave them fits. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's the perfect kind of 3-4 outside linebacker type. Reminds me a lot of Shaq Barrett when you watch Shaq Barrett on Sundays. And I definitely don't throw that around lightly. So that being said, Jalen Phillips is my second edge rusher. I think he is the most polished pass rusher. I think that he will come in and be a very safe player from a production standpoint, right? Like I think he'll make an instant impact, and I think he'll be very good as a pass rusher from day one. But it's just really like the medical concerns for me as somebody who has dealt with concussions on myself. I've had 3 or 4 from football and a couple others from basketball. That's no joke. And the fact that he had to medically retire from football and then go to Miami, where there's just a little too many concerns there for me. I do think that Azeez Ojulari is a little more bendy and quick twitched. I think that really is kind of the difference in terms of grading them, right? Because my grade doesn't take into account Jalen Phillips's red flags. It's the same reason why I have Caleb Farley still as my second graded corner, because my grades don't take into account the medical concerns. Obviously, grading and ranking is a little different of where I would take them, right? That's a different conversation. So I think Jalen Phillips is the second most talented and second most efficient edge rusher in the class. I just don't know how high I would take him. I would be more than okay with the Chargers taking Azeez Ojulari at 13. I'd be a little cautious of the Chargers taking him at 13, taking Jalen Phillips at 13, that is, instead of Azeez Ojulari. So third for me, Azeez and Jalen Phillips both have first round grades, by the way. So third for me is going to be Kwity Paye from Michigan. Like Jalen Phillips, I feel fairly confident in saying that Kwity Paye will make an impact as a rookie. I just don't know how much of that's going to be a pass rush impact. But Kwity Paye is outstanding against the run. I think he's the best edge rusher against the run in the class for my money. I think he's got the requisite power and strength and versatility to be able to rush from the inside, rush from the outside, and like I said, be a playmaker in the run game. I think he's one of the most versatile edge rushers in the class because of that ability as a power rusher, which I think is just really outstanding. All right. Next one for me is going to be Joseph Osai. So Joseph Osai comes in at number 4. He's only a first year edge rusher. He played a little bit more off the ball before this coming season, but I think he's really explosive off the jump. He's got a really good get off, and I really like his motor. Similar to Kwity Paye, I'm very confident that Joseph Osai will make an impact as a run defender. I think he is outstanding in that regard. And I've talked about this before. The game against Oklahoma State with Tevin Jenkins, Jenkins kind of dominated him, but Joseph Osai never stopped working, right? And I've talked about this with other players. Like, are you the same player effort wise from start to finish? And that's hard to always bring that energy when you're getting really dominated by an opposing tackle who is really kind of outclassing you. But Joseph Osai kept on working, kept on working, kept on working, and he rushed a little bit from the other side, made a lot of plays for his team, and ultimately he made the game-saving sack against Tevin Jenkins on a speed rush in overtime. So to me, it says a lot about Tevin Jenkins as a tackle that he could do that for 62 minutes against Joseph Osai. But it also tells me a lot about Joseph Osai as a person, as an individual, as a football player, to have that kind of effort and motor and will to win from start to finish, despite getting dominated for most of the game. So Joseph Osai, I feel like, is a very quality edge rusher, and he comes in at number 4 for me. At number 5 is Gregory Rousseau from Miami. This is a bit of an interesting evaluation because it's to the point now where I feel like I'm higher on him than most, which I did not feel like that was the case 2 months ago. But it's just been a really interesting evaluation process for Gregory Rousseau because, for the most part, most of the people that opted out have kind of maintained their draft status, right? Like Caleb Farley. I mean, obviously now with the back injury, but everybody knew that Caleb Farley was going to be a top 12 pick up until this recent back injury. And same thing with Penei Sewell and Rashawn Slater. They've kind of jockeyed for position, but they're still considered top 10 picks. And you could even look at, Paul Adediba, who I like. He's kind of maintained that third round, draft status as well. But Gregory Rousseau has been really up and down. And we had Brentley Weissman on in early December, late November, and he was saying that people thought Gregory Rousseau was going to be like a top 8 pick. And now, he's kind of looked at as like a second round pick, which I just don't understand. And so he didn't have a great pro day, but he did run a really, really good 40. And the thing there is his 10-yard split was outstanding. It was in like the 90th percentile. So he's not super, like quick twitch and change the direction, but he gets to point A to point B really, really fast. And you're not drafting Gregory Rousseau because of his, change of direction ability. Like Kwity Paye, Jalen Phillips, they're obviously a little quicker in the short term. Same with Azeez Ojulari. You're drafting Gregory Rousseau because of his length and because of his upside, because he's only played one season of defensive end. He had 15 and a half sacks, 20 tackles for loss, which was arguably the best season of any edge rusher of that class. Only Chase Young had better numbers than he did. So I think Gregory Rousseau, to me, showed enough growth during that one season with his pass rush arsenal. Tyler and I have talked about, like, as an edge rusher, you have to have a plan. And Gregory Rousseau obviously did not have a plan in the first couple of games because he had never played the position at a high level. So I'm comfortable enough with how he grew throughout that season that I would be willing to take a shot on him, frankly, at 13. Like, it would be a dart throw for sure. It would be a little risky, and he definitely would not be up my priority list, right? Like, definitely would be offensive tackle. I probably would even take a receiver before Gregory Rousseau. But if there's if there's a coaching staff that I trust to get the most out of Gregory Rousseau, it's the Chargers with Giff Smith, Jay Rogers, and Brandon Staley. I think the thing with Rousseau that nobody's really talking about is that they would put Rousseau at nose tackle in front of the center in their kind of nickel dime packages, and then they would rush him at guard at times. They would rush him over the tackle, and he was amazing. Like, had some awesome production, and Miami didn't have a plan for him. He didn't really have a plan for himself, and he was still able to produce. And so to me, like, the Gregory Rousseau stuff is just weird. Like, I don't understand it. Like, he hasn't played a game in a year, so like, what kind of new information are you reacting to? did you think that he was just this amazing athlete? And I didn't really think that. I felt like he's a player who's still growing into his body. I think he said he's gained 15 pounds in the last, 18 months since he decided to opt out. So I'm a fan of Gregory Rousseau to the point where, like I said, it's a weird conversation to have right now. So Gregory Rousseau at number 5. At number 6 is Carlos Boogie Basham from Wake Forest. He's a player that, if you listen to our recent episode on edge rushers, Boogie Basham was the player that I'm kind of pounding my table for. If you're kind of wondering where the nickname Boogie comes from, you can think of DeMarcus Cousins, who's really just kind of like in his heyday, not anymore, right? Because he's not really athletic anymore. But, in his prime when he was in Sacramento, he was a bully, right? Like that's what boogie means, is somebody who's bullying someone. And that's Carlos Boogie Basham to me. He's just someone that's going to come in and he's going to make an impact as an edge rusher, as a pass rusher, as a run defender, all of it, because he's so strong at the point of attack. I think he's probably a little, I don't know what's the right word, because I would be a little concerned about playing him as a 3-4 outside linebacker, obviously, but as a 3-4 defensive end or a traditional 4-3, kind of big end, right? Like, we saw Gus Bradley kind of preferred to play Jerry Tillery as a defensive end at some points. I think that kind of role would suit Boogie Basham very well. But the thing you just like about him is that he's got the most violent hands in the class. Like he gets his hands on opposing tackles so quickly, so violently, and he's got the kind of power to make these tackles, really work. I think, Jackson Carman from Clemson is a very large human being, and Carlos Boogie Basham gave him fits all game long and really for the last 2 years. So I really like Carlos Basham. I think he's going to be a steal for somebody in the second round as probably, the 6th or 7th edge rusher off the board, because everybody loves Jason Elway for no freaking reason. Shout out to Alex. But I like Boogie Basham a lot, man, and I'm a big fan of his. All right, after Boogie Basham comes in Patrick Jones at number 7. Another evaluation that's gone a little weird. Like it's to the point where he's available in like the 4th round. And I just don't really understand it. When you watch him, I got really strong, like Jadeveon Clowney vibes as somebody who is a very physical, quick twitch, fast edge rusher. He didn't have the best week down at the Senior Bowl, but he did make a couple big plays in the actual game, which maybe that's kind of where the lack of buzz is stemming from, is that he didn't have a great week of practice. But I try not to hold that against too many people because it's such a foreign environment. And so I think when you watch Patrick Jones, the film really should speak for itself. And I think he's got all the tools. I think he can play a 3-4 outside linebacker. I think he can play traditional 4-3 defensive end. And really just similar to Boogie Basham, right? It's the violence in which that he plays that makes me such a big fan of him. And I think he's going to be a fantastic player. All right. Patrick Jones was number 7, excuse me. All right. So at number 8, we have Joe Tryon. I'm just working now on his scouting profile, which is going to be fantastic. I hope you guys, give that a read later on. But the thing with Joe Tryon, he's the quickest player off the ball, in my opinion, in the class. His get off is outstanding. It's so much fun watching the 2019 Washington defensive line, because you have Joe Tryon and Levi Onwuzurike, who are so explosive and fast off of the ball. It's just amazing to watch. Joe Tryon, I think he'll be a fantastic fit for what Brandon Staley has traditionally looked for. He's got great length, great size, great mobility. And one of the things that you like about Joe Tryon is he's one of the few players in this class as an edge rusher that has experience in coverages. And that's the thing about Washington defense. They're so multiple with how they attack the defensive schemes. You watch them against my alma mater, Utah, and they got 8 guys in the box. They got big ends. Like they're going 3 defensive tackles because they got to stop the run. And then you watch them against Washington State, and they're in like a 3-3-5 defense that you'd see in the Big 12. And so they're so multiple. They asked Joe Tryon, Levi Onwuzurike, everybody to do so many different things. And I think that only bodes well for them in the NFL. Joe Tryon can rush from the inside. He can rush from the outside. He can drop into coverages. He's just a great athlete. He's really long and lanky. It's just the inexperience really kind of shows up because he only played one full season as a starter. So the inexperience really shows up because he doesn't maintain leverages as a rusher and as a run defender. He's really overzealous when it comes to pursuing running backs in RPO situations, which really leads to easy quarterback runs. And he really, his counter move, his go-to counter move, right? Like his plan of attack is I'm either going to speed rush you or I'm going to speed to power you. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to speed to inside rip and dip, which is, inside rushes are so risky because if the guard is free on that same side, you're likely getting popped like Quentin Nelson did to Melvin Ingram, right? And also you break contain against a quarterback, right? So if you rush on the inside, the quarterback can easily just go outside. And if you're playing Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, that's not going to work. You can do that against Tom Brady. It's not going to work against the more mobile guys. You can do it against Big Ben, but it's not going to work every single week. So he's got to get better at those kind of things. So it's really just the amount of reps, the lack of reps, instead of, that's kind of the better way to say it, I feel like. But he's a long, lanky athlete, and I love the way that he plays. All right. Long-winded. The last player on my list here is going to be Peyton Turner out of Houston. Him and Joe Tryon have the exact same grade for me. I think they're both really long athletes. I think both of them fit what the Chargers want to do. I think Tryon is a little more explosive. Like he's really quick out of the, he shoots out of a cannon. But Peyton Turner, I feel like, is a little stronger, a little better and smarter against the run. And I think he plays harder. So it's a little different there. They have the same exact grade, but it really kind of even out in different ways because Peyton Turner, to me, he's one of my favorite players in the class to watch because he just plays so hard. And, the thing with him in terms of like where he'll go, it's kind of just the lack of game reps because, he kind of mentioned this in our interview. They used to run a 3-3-5 too. So he didn't really have a whole lot of production, right? Because as a 3-3-5 defensive end, you just don't get many opportunities. You're double teamed on every single play rushing the passer. And then this past season, they only played, I think, 5 games, and I think he only played in 3 because of an injury. So that kind of is going to determine where he goes. But I'm a big fan of his. Like I said, length, athleticism, explosiveness, and he's got one of the best motors in the class. I think he's always hustling, chasing down players from the backside. So I'm a big fan of Peyton Turner as well. All right. Whew. Knock that one out. All right. So that is my top 10 edge rushers. It's Azeez Ojulari, Jalen Phillips, Kwity Paye, Joseph Osai, Gregory Rousseau, Carlos Boogie Basham, Patrick Jones, Joe Tryon, and Peyton Turner. One of the other edge rushers that I'm really high on, look at my dog right here. Let's look at Sully. Sully, hi. One of the other edge rushers that I'm really high on that I think would be a steal for the Chargers, like in that 97th pick, is Ellerson Smith out of Northern Iowa. And I said this when we were kind of talking about him. The fact that Northern Iowa had Spencer Brown and Ellerson Smith at the same time is just kind of absurd. Unfortunately, if we had seen him have a 2020 season, I think we'd be looking at, a second round pick. I think he's that explosive. He had a great week down in the Senior Bowl, had a fantastic game chasing out Amari Rodgers, which I kind of talked about. So Ellerson Smith is the player outside of my top 10 that I'm like most high on. Alex has talked about Jason Owe. I can't get there. I'm sorry. He's just not somebody that I'm interested in. Another tough evaluation for me was Hamilcar Rashed Jr., which is, Tyler kind of mentioned this on the show. I'm kind of struggling to see if he's an outside linebacker or if he is a off the ball linebacker because he moves really well. It covers really well. But he also had that amazing 2019 season as an edge rusher. So he's somebody that I've kind of struggled to place. I don't think he'd be in my top 10 though, even if I was like all in on him as an edge rusher. But just wanted to mention those two things because I figured somebody else would ask me about them. So that'll do it for this video for me. If you would, please let me know what you guys think of my list. Let me know who your top 10 is. By all means, I'm definitely interested in hearing your feedback and your comments. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.